Welcome again to the DS Incubator. Today we are talking about project management on GitHub. The goal is, let me close the door so the noise comes through a little better. There you go. The goal is to basically show that we can manage projects with GitHub with very little overhead. And the focus is mostly project managers that manage projects that have some aspect involving GitHub. Because most of the code lives on GitHub around the globe, and if the code is already there, maybe it makes sense to use that platform as a tool to manage the projects themselves. So we don't need to use any extra and maybe complicated piece of software to manage the projects. Basically, the idea is to keep it as simple as possible, to keep it super, super simple. So the objectives today are the following. The idea is to, learn the basics about project management on GitHub, but we're going to be doing that from two perspectives. The very first perspective is the one that's going to take up most of the meetup, and that is the perspective of a project manager, who may or may not be the same person that actually develops the project or analyzes the data. So the perspective of the analyst and developer is going to go last. We're going to take only very little time there, because my goal here is to show that although this project management tool is not specifically designed for projects without code, it could, if you wanted, be used in that way. So one other objective is to basically watch the automation that lives that happens on this framework. The idea that work happens and the status of that work is automatically shown on the tool, and how you can also track what has been actually done in relation to different issues of the project by basically clicking on links that are kind of left behind as people work. So let's start then with the perspective of the project manager. The very first thing you could do is to create a GitHub account if you don't have one. Likely it's free, so no big deal there. And all the features that I'm going to show, they are available for free accounts, including those that relate to keeping everything private, and which is the default of creating projects. So when you create a project in an organization, so here, for example, I have a GitHub organization, which is a collection of, you can think of it as a collection of folders that live on GitHub. On this website, or you can imagine it as similar to a Dropbox account, where inside that Dropbox account you have a bunch of little folders, right? So that is a GitHub organization. So here I have one that I use for demos. It's called an.org, and you will see in the middle that there is a tab called Project. So if you click there, you will see the page that allows you to create a project. The green button here, that's what you want. You click there, and immediately you would get the interface for adding some details to the project and start adding some tasks or some work items to that project. The first interface actually is not what I said. It is an interface that allows you to choose between starting from scratch with a table or a board, which you will see in a moment what that is, or starting from some templates. Templates are basically developed versions of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to be starting from scratch, but here is a little bit of an overview of what you could also get. So you could start from something that is already semi-developed. So I'm going to start simple from a table. I click here, create, and that is what we get. Now we get a project. So here I'm already ready to start adding some work items. But before I do that, I notice that the title behind is unsatisfying. So I'm going to click on the title and I'm going to call it whatever name makes sense to this project. In this case, I'm pretending that we have a project called Lit, which some of us might find similar to another real project that we work on. And it is about getting data of companies from Lithuania. So that's why it's called Lit. So before I kind of continue, what I'm going to do is try to keep my notes on one side so I don't lose track of what I wanted to say. So let's pack this here to the left. There we go, because it's very easy for me to get distracted. So we have just created a project, so cover this item here. And what we are about to do is to create a backlog of all the work items that relate to this project. So here I'm going to give you a little bit of background about this project. So let's pretend that this project has already been running for some time and we want to adopt this tool only now. So the analysts and developers have been already busy by the time we chose to start using this tool. So there is already some work that happened in these special folders that GitHub has that are called repositories. So we can use this tool to get all the work that has already happened into this backlog. So first, let me again, there you go, refresh and delete project name is already added there. For some reason, it didn't refresh before. So if I click here on plus, as you can see, this looks a little bit of like an Excel sheet, if you will. So the first thing is empty. So the first thing I would do is click here on the plus to start adding work items. And here you see that there is two options to create something that is called a draft, basically a draft work item, or in the jargon of GitHub, a draft issue. But I know, because pretend that I'm the project manager here, and I'm here now in a meeting with my analysts and developers, and I'm asking them, hey, what have you been up to? And they say, yeah, we worked already quite a bit on this, and there's a couple of repositories of these special folders that have a lot of the work that we did. So go ahead, look for those, and you'll see what we've been doing. Okay, good. You click there, and then you add items from repositories. The lead project has two repositories. One is called lead code, which is the repository in charge of basically getting the data from a website like Yellow Pages, something like that, right? So all the code that was written to get automatically all that data downloaded and stored somewhere lives in this repository. And the analysts and developers have been working hard first to identify what websites were useful, and then they decided it was Yellow Pages, to identify then what variables that website has were useful, and so on and so forth. Then they wrote the code and did a bunch of things. So never mind, for now, let's just add everything here to this project board. We click there, and in a moment you'll see that the table that actually I could probably enlarge this a little bit like that. So at the back, we have here this table that was empty before, and now it has some data we just added. But there's not only one repo, there is more than one repo. There is another repo called lead data, which is the repository in charge of actually hosting the data. Once that it has been scraped from the web, it has to be stored somewhere that the analyst can access to be used and maybe massaged a little bit. So again, we're going to choose every item there, and then we'll figure out how we want to organize them, view them, and extract some insights about the processes and the progress of the project through this tool that helps us manage the project. So let's add all those items there. So by now we have like a long list of different things that people have been working on, like a little bit of GitHub jargon. The things that are in green are things that are open and kind of ongoing or that need to be done, and things that are in purple are things that have been worked already before. So let's have a quick look exploring this table. You see that there is a title that refers to the different work items that people have been working on. There's assignees, so the people, as they were doing their work, they seem to have assigned themselves to different tasks. And the status is unpopulated yet. We'll see a little bit of that later on. Also, the view here, you can change the name. We're going to change it soon to something to backlog, basically. So let's click there and call it backlog, which is backlog. Right, so just a long list of things that have been done, but this is not enough. So this is only what we know has been done already. We would like to also include here some things that need to be worked on in the future. So let's click there and add a draft for a work item. So let's create a draft there. And what we're gonna be typing here is something like represents the work that needs to be done. So for example, polish documentation. about the data set, right? So that could be a decent title for the work that needs to be done. Also, we could, we hit enter there, and that should appear there. There you go. And we could already assign someone to that. Let's say that there's a couple of people in this team. So Mauro has been assigned to a bunch of things. So let's assign him one more time. I don't think he's going to get annoyed about that. There you go. We have assigned that. And then in the status, we already decide that that's something that needs to be done. Obviously, it's not done or it's not in progress, something that has to be done at some point soon. So that's that for now. So that's how you enter data, or at least one way of entering data. Another way could be to switch the views, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. So, but before that, let me go back to the notes here to make sure that I'm not going too far off track. Right, so yes, what I wanted to show now, actually I did get a little bit ahead of myself. I already renamed this to backlog, which is something that I was intending to do. And what I did a little too fast was to show you that you can edit, for example, the information in this table from here, but also you could edit it graphically. Basically, if you click here on the view drop-down menu, you will see that there is another view of the same data in the form of a board. So let's click there. And the format here is called usually a Kanban, I believe. And by dragging things from one place to the other, you also basically edit that table that we saw before. So for example, I had just moved it from to do to in progress. So if I go back to that table, there it was. We should expect the status to be changed, to have changed to in progress. And there you go, right? I'm gonna now kind of modify it to what it really is to do, right? So the views are just what the name suggests, just views of the data, and the data that exists there is something that either comes from the work that happens behind, or someone adds it as metadata. Someone has to assign someone to a job, someone has to assign a status, but you will see later that the status does change automatically when you do specific things. So we're going to talk about that in a bit. So that's that for now. Let's go back to we achieved something pretty cool, which is to have the backlog, like everything that happened and needs to happen. But still, that information is a bit too messy. It's very hard to extract any useful meaning. We can't really easily see what needs to be done by whom, by when, and things like that. So we're going to improve that view and save it. So we're going to create a new view that shows us what are the open issues by iteration. We still don't even know what an iteration is, but we're going to get to that in a moment. So the first thing we're going to do is to notice that there are some fields that do not still exist in that table, but we can add them. They're simply hidden in the same way that Excel can hide some columns if you want. There's two columns that we're going to be interested for this demo. One is called milestone, and the other one is called linked pull requests. So let's do that. So in designing our next view of the data, we are going to add fields. So if I scroll here to the right, you see that there is a point where I can't go farther, and there is a plus. So I'm going to click on that plus to add a new field. But the fields, some fields are already available, as I suggested before, simply hidden, right? So I can choose, for example, the milestone field, and I can choose also the linked pull requests and a few others that you are welcome to play with yourself. So I did that, and here they are. It looks like the team had already agreed on a couple of milestones, and they came up with like phrases to define what those milestones are, and they have been tagging their work, associating it to the different milestones. So that's cool, because it will allow us to organize the work in a meaningful way. Also, these linked pull requests. So the pull requests are simply the actual work that follows an issue. And an issue is simply a conversation about code or about some work that needs to be done. So we have first the conversation and then the action, right? So as you can see, this is great because you can link the conversation about an idea to the actual implementation of that idea. Okay, so that's that. Let's go back to the notes. So what we are doing now is trying to build this new view of open issues by iteration. We already added a couple of fields, and now we're going to start organizing the data in a couple of meaningful ways. So first, we're going to group the data by the different milestones that the team has agreed on, and then we're going to filter by the state or type, ensuring that we are looking only at open issues. Then we're gonna continue, but let's start at that. So I'm gonna move here to the right. Here in the title, I can choose different filters. You can filter by specific values, but also you can filter by the state of the items. Remember, I told you the color gave us an indication about whether the work item was open or not. So if we click there, we can choose specifically open items. And that includes the issues, basically the ideas and the conversations about what needs to be done, which are these icons with a circle, and then also the pull requests, which are the actual work associated to those issues. But now we also learn about the syntax to filter things. So you can see that is column open filters for open things. So if you do is column and wait, you will see what options you have. Okay, we can do, for example, issues only. Because pull requests can be redundant. So if a pull request always follows an issue, then by knowing what's the state of the issue and what pull request that is linked to, you have enough information. So this is the filter that I want. So the entire data set now filtered to these couple of things where we have a better understanding of what needs to be done and what are the issues that we are talking about, and if any of that is already being worked on. And with that, we are also empowered to start kind of filling some gaps in the data that the developers may not have entered already. So let's have a look at that. But before I do that, let me have a quick glimpse to my schedule for today. Okay, so we have already grouped by milestone. We have already filtered open issues. Let's also complete the table, but by adding a new field. By adding some missing information about milestones and then create a new field about iteration. So let's do that. So first, let's focus on adding milestones that have not been added yet. So we see that from the two things that we care about right now, the first one already is allocated to the milestone, the data is ready, which should happen sometime soon in the future. And the other item also relates to data. It's about documenting the data. So I think it relates to the same milestone. So I'm going to add it here. I'm going to click that drop down. Actually, if I do that, I have to first convert that to an issue. And that's going to be the job of the person who has been assigned to that. So I'm not going to do that just now. What I'm going to do is maybe assign here in status, given that I know that this item has been already been worked on, I'm gonna set that to in progress. So at least I completed that piece of data. I think I'll leave it at that for now. Let's see what else I intended to do. Now we're gonna add iteration. So iteration is gonna be a new field in this view. I'm gonna go all the way back to the far right. Click on that new field thing, and if you look at it, there is no iteration here, right? So it's not hidden, you have to create it. So let's click on new field, and now notice that fields come in multiple types. It's like in Excel, you can create a column that hosts, for example, text, or that hosts a date, or that hosts a number, or in this case, GitHub was clever enough to come up with this iteration type of column, right? So let's click iteration and scroll down and save that change. So now we are gonna have in a moment an iteration column. So let's see, it was, maybe I was a bit too fast. You may have noticed that it is in units of 2 weeks. You can change that to anything, but 2 weeks sounds good to me. So because this first item is already being worked on, it makes sense that it belongs to the current iteration. So now I'm starting to kind of develop this project. So I'm gonna click there and allocate it to this iteration. Already has the dates, that's very convenient, so I don't have to think that much. And then the second one is something that needs to be done. So maybe it's a bit too rushed to allocate it to the iteration now. So I'm going to leave it to the next iteration. And then one thing would be nice to do is to group this data by iteration. So that I have a clear view of what needs to be done exactly now and what is left for later. Oops, I think I committed a mistake there. I must have clicked something unintentionally. Let me see where we are at. I have already iterations, and what I wanted to do is to click here in backlog and click here on group where it says none. I'm going to group by iteration. And there you go. So now I have done a lot of work to get to this view. So I could save this view on top of this one and overwrite the backlog, but that would be not as great. What I would love to have is to keep the backlog what it is, a backlog, like a collection of items, and then save this view as a new view, right? So I'm gonna scroll down here and go to save changes as a new view. So this new view is gonna pop up here soon to the right. It has a name view 2, but I can rename it to something more meaningful, like for example, there you go, open issues by iteration. And now these views, both the backlog of or the open issues by iteration, they all have links, right? So it's great because you can share those URLs with stakeholders. You can share that with your developers, analysts, with your product owners, or whoever needs to see the data in specifically that way that you design. If you go to the backlog, you will see that it remains unchanged. It is the same view. It's still taking a little bit to refresh. It's taking the same view that it originally was, and now it does have that iteration column, which I wasn't expecting. Not sure how that works, but there are two completely different views of the exactly same data. Right? So let me go back to my notes. We're getting also close to the end, so I may need to rush a little bit here. We added iteration, we save the changes to a new view. Okay, we're done with the perspective of the project manager for now. What we're gonna do now is very quickly change our hat and wear the hat of a developer or an analyst. So the first thing that we're gonna do is, okay, there's someone who was allocated to work on that draft thing and actually get some work done. So that person, maybe gets the URL for that view, or participates in a meeting with the project manager where they discuss that needs to be done. So this is the piece of work. It's easy to see now. You could also filter this data by assignee, but in this case this is the only person that has been working here. So this is the item that needs to be done. It has no work associated to it, so that's what comes next. So that person clicks on the draft issue and converts it to an actual issue. Basically is to make official the idea that needs to be worked on. So you can see that there is a link here to convert this to an actual issue. It has been already allocated to an iteration, and now we need to allocate it to one of the two repositories or that relate to this project. In this case, it is the project data, because we need to document the data. And as we do that, this is already becoming an issue. It's processing now, but you'll see this draft thing changes to actual issue. It's going to take the color green, and now we are in an interface that allows us to edit the issue itself. Here we could add that milestone that we were due to add. The data is ready. That is the milestone towards which we're going to be working. There's no pull request linked yet, so that's that. And then in the status to do, if we're going to be working on it right now, we could just change it to in progress, right? So let's do that. So now let's reflect on what we have just done. So the one analyst or one developer has basically started work, and that changed the project, right? So the project no longer is in the state in which it was before. A draft issue is now an issue, and some metadata has been added about that piece of work. So that needs to be reflected in the project. And the beauty of it is that update happens automatically. You can see that what was before a draft, a gray circle, now is a green circle, meaning that it's an actual issue, and that the metadata that was changed by the developer or by the analyst already was entered there. So the one last thing I'm going to show is the similar thing with actually when some work actually happens, how that also gets reflected on the board. So we know that there is an open pull request here that needs to be reviewed. So let's go to that one, and by clicking here, you see how from the project, from the high level view of the project, you have a direct link to the piece of work that has been done. So I click there, I go to the page where I can inspect that work. But still, I'm kind of wearing the hat of the analyst or developer. So this is the person who's going to actually merge the pull request, meaning that the piece of work, once it has been reviewed by a colleague, is ready to be put into production. So we're going to click here on the button that says merge pull request. And that's that. Basically, the change or the work that happened in relation to the idea that was in progress is now complete. So if I go to the project board, I would expect that refreshing that table could show that issue associated to the work is closed. As you see, it disappeared. It didn't. Iteration 1 in progress. So, okay, I think there was something missing there that closes for confirm merge. There you go. I forgot to click one last time to confirm that I did want to merge that change. Okay, so with that, my expectation would be that refreshing the project board could inform everyone, the developers, the project managers, everyone interested in keeping track of things, that piece of work has been already been done. So there you go. Actually, you see how the status automatically changed to done. The linked pull request changed from color green to color purple. And that's that, right? So with that, I go back to the notes and reflect on the takeaways. So the takeaway is that GitHub projects are very user-friendly. Even if you don't write code, you may be tempted to try them out. If some work is already on GitHub anyway, because if you write some code, most likely some of it is on GitHub, then it kind of makes sense to start managing projects there too. So you don't need to add any layer of any tool that may add complexity and not so much value. And finally, it's great that because everything happens on the same platform, everything is linked and everything happens automatically. So with that, I finish. Thank Miria, Jakub, and Matthias for conversations about project management on GitHub that led to this meetup. Do we have any questions or comments here?
Maybe just a few very quick ones. So first of all, thanks a lot, Mauro. Above all, this functionality to save views, I was not aware of, and it looks super practical. I have a super small knit column. It might not be a good idea to call the board backlog, because the backlog actually refers to your to-do list in Scrum, whereas the board gives you the entire overview. And something else that I found very convenient about GitHub boards is that you can super flexibly also adjust your board to have new statuses. So for example, in stress testing, we added a column in review. You might want to have other things like on hold, etc. So you can get even more fine-grained overview about maybe your bottlenecks in your process, etc. And I actually have two questions. First of all, did you come across a possibility to associate issues with each other? Like, for example, showing that one ticket is blocked by the other. And my second question is, I saw that there was the hidden column reviewers. Is it possible to automatically infer the reviewers of an issue by the PR reviewers? Because those just would also be super practical for the product manager to see what people are actually busy with at the moment.
Great, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna, as you know, but I have to disclose to the audience, I'm very new to this, so I'm learning basically by doing the meetup. So a lot of the things are more what I think it could happen. I think that the reviewers are indeed if you add a reviewer on the pull request, that is what is expressed under the reviewers column in the project board. So that would be, I think, a yes. Also, like, thank you for the comment about the backlog. Yeah, I was kind of unsure about if that would be a good name for it. The way to link issues, honestly, I didn't try for this meetup if you can link more than one item to any other item. Maybe yes, would be my guess. It would be nice to try. Every time on GitHub, what I have done is many times, from one issue mention another issue using the syntax, pound number of issue. If it belongs to the same repo, or if it belongs to another repo, you have to actually mention the organization / repo pound number of issue. So that creates links that you can track from one issue to the other. So allows you to kind of click on things and basically jump to the other place. So I would expect that because because GitHub already has that feature, I would expect that the column linked pull requests could probably allow more than one item, but that's something that I would need to confirm. I forget if you asked any other question or made another comment.
That was all, thanks.
Cool. Francisca, I think you have your hand up, right?
She had to sneak out.
Okay, good. Any other comment or question before we leave?
I'm good, but thank you very much, Mauro.
Okay, thank you all, and hopefully this will be enough to get you started playing with it, and then if you have questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you. See you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.